Hello, everyone, and welcome to a super cool, super fun episode of Everything Life Coaching. I am Noelle Cordeaux, one of the founders of Lumia Coaching, host of our podcast today. And with me is a dear friend, colleague, Lumia alum, and I dare say futurist, Paul Chamberlain. How you doing today?
Hi, Noel. I'm good. I'm good.
Well, thank you for joining me. Today, our topic is going to be the top trends in wellness. I do this every year. I break out the top trends that we're going to be facing in the year ahead. And instead of like a 10-point checklist, this year we're going to do a part one and a part two because really there are just two big trends that are happening within the world of wellness. But before we get into the deep cut, I want to give just a little bit of a window into setting us up. And I also want to not so humbly share that every single prediction that I've ever made about the wellness industry from the last 10 years or so onward has really come to fruition. So I'm ready to go with this one. I'm gonna, definitely sit on my bets for this one. And how do we crunch the data? How do I crunch the data? How do we interpret this stuff? We are looking at major long-term cultural and demographic shifts. And when we're looking at these kind of shifts, these are like seismic plates that will inevitably shape the world of wellness. And as coaches, we need to know and understand this landscape because we're in a time where there are and are going to continue to be major crises in human and planetary health. And we're also really looking at trends that are impacting the wellness of people beyond the 1%, things that have staying power that are going to be just really taking root as we march into the future. So, the spaces that we're looking at are what are the different consumer groups for coaching, and how do these groups think, act, and behave differently? So the part that we're going to get to later on, maybe in a couple months, is going to be optimization. This sector represents high tech, the medical complex, what we've come to know and expect from the march of wellness in hyper optimizing very expensive. And the foil to it, what we're going to be focusing on today, is a slow growing, very powerful movement that represents every man and really represents the average consumer's desire for low pressure, less relentlessly self optimizing, low tech, and a less expensive breed of wellness where social and mental well being matter the most. Paul,
Yeah.
as you've been traveling around the world and working on different aspects of things that are impacting humanity, what's your take on this anti optimization trend?
It's the binary. It's people think it's all or nothing. You're either involved in AI, or you're either a radical accelerationist, as they call them, or you're dancing with Luddite and you're going to stay out of it. You see it as inherently evil, or, you know, the the creator of the next utopia. There's no gray area right now, and that, in my experience, I have found in every single technological trend, the way humanity responds. It's either going to be one or the other, and we never, ever know what's going to be in between or what follows after this pop. And that's really that, especially in coaching and especially in human relations. There's a lot of, when you encounter insecurity or when you encounter a little agitation, it's only because people feel, one, I'm being left behind, or I don't know what's going on, and all I'm hearing are buzzwords. And so yeah, I would love to bring down that temperature and kind of illuminate the opportunities and the very, very easy to avoid pitfalls as they stand right now.
Yeah. Can you give us a little bit of the historical context that you're referring to? The major um, optimization tech developments from a historical perspective that we're kind of where we can learn from at this point in time.
I mean, the most famous one, and I mean, it went around on, it's been memed all over the place. Neil deGrasse Tyson talked about how quickly um, the streets of New York changed from 1890 to 1920, from horses to cars. Like, complete industries emerged and complete industries receded.
Mm.
And that acceleration rate has only happened much quicker. And I mean, the one that we can all kind of put our fingers on was the advent of the iPhone. We all had
Mhm.
mobile phones. We all were like messing around with LimeWire, or ripping off music here and there on Napster, but then something aggregated them all. No new technology. It was just the glass rectangle just became an aggregator. And then nobody could ever foresee, we had our games and we had our few things, but nobody could see what Facebook, nobody saw Instagram coming. Nobody saw GPS being used in the way it is. So with the iPhone, it was just, I'll never forget it, being at a dinner party and somebody had the first iPhone there, and they were showing little Nemo on it. And everybody's like, this is the greatest thing in the world. This is amazing. I'll be able to give it to my kids to calm them down. Okay, now we know probably not the best. So yeah, but look at everything it's caused. In the developing world, people have cell phones to ensure their safety and communicate before they have electricity or running water. So we can't game it out. We can just be as malleable and adaptive as we possibly can.
Absolutely. And, I'd be remiss if we didn't mention the underlying global factors that are kind of driving a fear response of
Sure.
folks looking out into the world.
Yeah,
And the world is stressful.
it
There's a
is.
lot.
And this is, and what we're in is profoundly different from things in the past. All the booms and busts, .com, cars, you know, outside of the advent of the splitting of the atom, there has never been something introduced into the consumer market that had immediate geopolitical ramifications and immediate institutional and political backing and funding, and then also an obscene amount of capital being poured into it at the same time, and that it touches politics, economy, entertainment all across the board. We're in a little bit of a new frontier, the way
Mhm.
that the adoption level is going on that one. So people may not even be able to put their finger on it or name it, but there's an existential tension where everybody's like, this is new. I don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah. And so we're really specifically talking about AI and the rapid integration of artificial intelligence and LLMs into our world.
Sure. And then how not just these specific consumer based tools are, but then the way that it's being used, from tasks of serving you up what you want to see on Netflix and YouTube, to facial recognition systems, to things like this. It is pervasive. It is everywhere. And only in the last 2 years is when people have really been able to see the power of it, and the fact that it is not based in math and code, but it is based in language, makes it highly accessible and highly influential and highly useful in a lot of areas.
And highly accessible too.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And so, this is kind of the setup for where the wellness marketplace is really splitting
yeah,
into two groups. And when I talk about the wellness marketplace, I'm talking about people purchasing wellness services, of which coaching fits into at least 11 of the different sectors that are
wow,
represented by the wellness marketplace, from workforce wellness to hospitality to spas to hotels to beauty, fitness, food, lifestyle, mental well-being. It Coaching is part and parcel of all of these different sectors. So as coaches, we kind of need to chase this stuff and really figure it out. So on one hand, we have folks who are, chasing optimization through bioengineering, through technology. And then we have this growing movement that is very important to attend to because it represents a huge sector of consumer society, those who are anti optimization, those who are looking for a core return to aspects of civilization that people perceive as being lost along the way.
Can I support that statement with some actual
Please.
facts? Alex Ohanian, who was the co-founder of Reddit, has since sold Reddit and moved on, and he is beginning to put the majority of his riches towards what he believes is the next growth market, and it is in live events, live
Mhm.
sports, visceral things that you will not be able to optimize, that you will not be able to productize through technology, but will become more valuable, such as a crafted meal by a chef at a chef's table. The things that will become luxury items, there won't be a sticker on products anymore that'll say new and improved. There'll be stickers saying human made. And so moving towards this analog, tactile, visceral world is not only a direction, but also a hell of a growth market.
A hell of a growth market. And the reason that I wanted to invite you to have this very specific conversation with me is because of the work that you are doing and what you've been building since you left Lumia. You've just launched Smart Funny Tortured,
Mhm.
which is all about the visceral lived experience of the imperfect human. And
Or
as we're sitting,
the perfect human for now, because it's based on no longer this being a world of specialists, but now a world in which generalists can thrive. And oftentimes, those of us who were told to pick one life path and pick one thing to do for our lives, and that would ensure abundance and prosperity, that's gone. And so Smart Funny Torture, the framework is built on optimizing those elements, which is much deeper dive on each one of them, but preparing you for this new world that's coming that's going to require people to be able to pull from disparate areas, synthesize, come up with new ideas. I mean, there's multiple examples of breakthroughs through history where it just wasn't a guy that just knew one thing sitting in a lab for 30 years. It was somebody that did this for 20, then went into something else and went, hey, wait a minute, and cross pollinated. And boom, we've gotten some of our greatest inventions and breakthroughs that way.
yeah, absolutely. And as we're thinking about this and this analog trend, it wasn't born in a vacuum. It's
Yeah.
continued to grow and morph as our relationship to wellness continues to evolve. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is the World Economic Forum put out the list of skills that cannot be replicated by
Mhm.
AI, that cannot be overtaken by technology. And I took a look at that and I was like, that is every single skill set that we teach inside my coach training program.
Yeah.
Like thinking about from a coaching lens, how to support people in developing the skills that you alluded to. So if we have the smart, funny, tortured person, as we have this person who has been socialized their whole life. Like you get on this path, you do this thing, you play the game, you go to the schools, and there's a soul, there's an intellect, there's a yearning for aspects of civilization that we've lost. And now all of a sudden, there's going to be this huge population of people that's going to need to figure out how to be in community, how to synthesize, how to pivot, how to move. That's coaching.
That's coaching. And the irony of that is you think of somebody that's been frustrated and having trouble getting lift off their whole lives. The majority of my clients in which I've used the Smart Funny Tortured framework on have been exceptionally successful executives and creatives
Yep.
who are reaching the end either through the change in their industry or just after 20 years going, there's got to be more. I have never answered my calling, talked to my soul, gotten out of my own way to do what I truly want to love. And I'm like, great, because now you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, as we're exploring the visceral response that people are having to the binary, we can't have this conversation without looking at the role of tech adaption, the
Mhm.
blurred lines between home and work, the way that relationships changed in terms of social media and projection, the way third spaces,
Yeah.
evaporated, and that the distinction between real and not real is genuinely disappearing before our eyes. One of the things that I think about is the fact that, as challenging as it is for folks and coaches and folks who are just getting started to get on video and start talking,
Yeah.
that is one of the things that you can do to actually differentiate yourself from that which is artificially produced, right?
Yep.
And we're also dealing with the leftover sludge of what has happened to all of us
Yeah.
without awareness since 2008, since that smartphone first came out.
Mhm.
The Oxford University Press named brain rot as its 2024 word of the year. And the definition is the deterioration of a person's mental or intellectual state from the overconsumption of bad and trivial online content. What say you?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
that's yes. I mean, one of we've all read some scary books and we've all seen horror movies and everything. The scariest book I've read in the past year was, I have it right here, The Anxious Generation
Mm.
by Jonathan Haidt, talking about, okay, we've got the data on what 10 years of iPads and iPhones did to kids. Hello, here it is. And having a 15 and an 18-year-old and seeing their friends. And yeah, there is 2008, the bomb went off, and we are still living in the blast radius.
100%. 100%. So, speaking to our coaches who are really excited about human connection, who are looking to the future saying, I know what brain rot is. I don't want it for myself. I don't want it for my family. I don't want it for my community. One of the things that we really need to harness is the fact that the wellness marketplace rose alongside of digital expansion
Mm,
by providing alternatives,
yeah.
by providing in person connection, by providing stress reduction, even by providing touch through massage, through hands on activities. And what we're seeing right now is a market backlash against the attention and sanity destroying digital world, and that backlash is becoming really dramatic and really intense. The pandemic kind of squished us
Mhm.
all mentally, emotionally, and psychologically. We couldn't go out to restaurants. Things became even more digitized, and now as people are kind of like very inelegantly figuring out how to detach from it, there's this craving for in real life
Yeah.
experiences, but nobody knows how to do it.
Yeah.
Our how to be human meter is broken.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do you see a starting point for people and for coaches to begin to assist folks with their fear and hesitancy and terror around in-person interactions, even though we know that's where we need to go?
Acknowledgement and recognition, in standing up, being that person that that old Norman Rockwell picture of the guy standing up with the Constitution in his pocket in the town hall. That's what you have to be as a coach, going, yeah, I there is a lot. I see you. Essentially say, I see you. I realize that there's this existential tension you're feeling. I know that it goes away when you go home and get on your devices, or, do things to ameliorate what's going on, but I see you, and it's as a result of A, B, and C, and this is what I specialize in. I recognize, because I have known somebody that has been in a AI companionship addiction. I
Mm.
recognize that one. I see you because I have teenagers and I know I've seen their friends I've come downstairs and it has been quiet as a church with 4 teenage boys in the house. It's because they're all on their devices. When you make that kind of connection, like, one of my favorite stories is the guy that falls down the hole and asks a doctor, asks a priest. They don't help him out, but then his buddy crawls down there and says, "What? Wait, you're down here in the hole with me?" And he's like, "Yeah, I know a way out because I've been down here before." And so for you to connect at that level, because that's what people want. They just don't want to go to a therapist for the sake of going to a therapist or signing up for a coach for the sake of performance. They want somebody that has walked those shoes. So if you have a special affinity or a personal connection to a lot of these maladies that are floating around right now, speak up. You point yourself out and go, yeah, I know, I know, and then be specific, and then own that space, own that, that groove. The one that I keep telling a couple of our associates that you and I share that deal with addiction and relationships and love addiction. It's like, you have no idea of the wave that's cresting on addiction with AI companions. I mean, it is such a dangerous boil right now, and it's going to be everywhere in a couple of years. And so it's like, so not getting into part two, but pick something of this era that you have an affinity for and wedge yourself in.
Yeah. And I think what's important to really highlight is that this trend away from optimization, this trend away from technology for consumers, for our future clients, for the people that we're going to work with as coaches, this is a deeply personal trend
Yeah.
that is hitting at the core of what it means to be human.
Your clients need a squishy, safe place.
Yeah.
They don't need another screen. They and that's where, you and I have talked about this. Coaching and therapy have either been symbiotic or at loggerheads. And this is the one where I feel like coaching can break a little bit away from the pack, in that there can be a more personal interaction, still professional, still within the parameters in which we've been taught, but you can establish that much more of a connection in that whole, I see you. I've been there. A lot of what's happened in the addiction space with alcoholism and things like that. Your mentor is another alcoholic. So if you're talking to somebody that right now you need that, like I said, that squishy person, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I find examples of how to do this, of how to kind of bridge a more personal experience from different spaces that have long been on the fringe. So, for example, with this trend, we know, who is the anti-technology movement being led by? Gen Z and millennials.
Mhm.
What's happening? They are hungry for pre-digital hobbies like crafting experiences and really looking to restore things that are tactile, like touch, like physically touching a board game, right? And gamification, being in social spaces and relationships with each other. When coaches are able to utilize these very old school
Mhm.
types of activities to bring people together, because it's led by a coach, folks are given permission to
Yeah.
show up, to practice their social skills. Where has this been done in the past and where has it been done well? It's been done in the realm of sex work and pro doms
Mhm.
and people leading munches and a lot of different sexuality spaces, where if somebody comes into a sexuality space or a BDSM space and they want to go to a play party and they don't know how to act, they don't know how to be around other people in a safe way, it's not a no. It's you need to start with a game night. You need to come and
Yeah.
start playing
That's
games
great.
so that you can learn how to socially interact before you can graduate into more intense and visceral social environments. So, taking this concept that has long been used and has long been practiced in sexuality spaces, which is really important. Why am I highlighting sexuality spaces? Because that's human touch, That's human connection on a primal and visceral level that is so anti-technology that that's where our next version of currency is really going to live. And so we can quite literally start looking at what the pros are doing and say, okay, this is a proven way in to help people begin to engage with each other socially in group led activities with tactile application around the introduction of social skills and community.
And if I can build on that, you can take it to other sectors in that a group getting together to make a communal meal of real farm to table fresh fruit and being taught how by somebody that shows them how to fusion of flavors and natural ingredients and doing it with a group of people where food is love at the end of it, or being in a class where you're finally able to access creative expression
Yeah.
and things, and in a group setting again where you're rewarded and supported and seen. And so that's, you can go right across that whole spectrum, and it's that it literally is creating and fostering community, and then speaking to things that are outside of, I mean, is as simplistic as it sounds, outside of the realm of capitalism.
Right.
Leave capitalism and tech and just go back to the basics of what we've always wanted for millennia. I think it's a pretty good place to start. I mean, even from a goddamn vinyl bar where where it's just the music that's played is off of records. You can see the
Right.
record, you can see the needle going down, you can hear the cracks. Okay, that's visceral, that's tactile, that's, I've got it. So yeah.
And this is where these trends are going. It's crafting, creating, reading, listening to music, learning with others, social ceramics, knitting, reading salons. I might add that most of these spaces are by definition no phone, old school game nights. We're seeing analog clubs and salons and bars that are non-alcoholic bars
Yeah.
rewriting the idea of nightlife and self-care. Now, if you're listening and you're thinking, well, where do I come into this as a coach? What we are seeing is that people are not going to these spaces unless there is a sanctioned leader that is in charge who is giving people permission to do the thing. So we need a steward, we need ambassadors, we need coaches to be picking up this mantle and working with people in third spaces, in community spaces, and really, you know, allowing the spaces to unfold where there are people going on walks, game nights, knitting, craft making, or even gardening together.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, structure and adding to that, structure and safety are the most important things. Emotional safety, and if there's, I mean, because time is incredibly valuable now. So there's nothing more fulfilling than going to one of those events and having it be professionally and properly led and feeling emotionally safe. I mean that and again, going back to what Alex Ohanian said, these are the things that people will pay handsomely for. Not to switch back to capitalism, but as far as a growth market, these are going to become luxury items.
I want to double down on that and say luxury items is one descriptor, and there's also another way to think about this in terms of what's the outcome. It's human connection, it's eye contact, it's touch, it's the experience of belonging and being in community, and that experience is so fundamentally human and so fundamentally important for our health, our mental health, our emotional health, our physical health, that this slice of life is going to, here's my prediction, this slice of life within the wellness marketplace is going to rise to the same level of recognition as healthy eating and exercise.
Absolutely.
Am I
Absolutely.
getting my healthy? Am I getting my fruits and vegetables? Am I getting my movement? Am I getting my social connection? And no one has been talking about that. Am I getting my social connection? And this is where we're going.
That's the Venn diagram with longevity too, because that's being trumpeted that is one of the leading cause of mortality, and then also longevity. It's like if you have community, if there is connection and love and all that going into your later years, you're given a good chunk of years back. So yeah, that once again, there's the crossover.
There's the crossover, and Boston, Mass just put out a huge study on what's called the anti-dementia diet, and part and parcel in that diet is it's get your 2 servings of grains, get your 2 servings of lean protein, get your conversations in with 2 people who are outside of your primary relationship. And that one stuck with me,
Yeah.
that there are so many people out there who do not have 2 people to have conversations with outside of a primary relationship. And so
Yeah.
the outcome that we're chasing with all of this essentially wellness tourism bubbling up in terms of tactile, real human connection is actually fostering the relationships that contribute to the psychological conditions that we need to maintain our brains.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So now, let's take a look at some of the different ways that this is shaking out in different sectors. So, workforce wellness is one of them, and what we have going on is major disruption is coming, and we already have 82% of white collar workers are suffering from burnout,
Hmm.
and the vast majority of companies do not have any way of looking at or measuring or understanding the impact of digital connection. They don't have digital disconnection policies. There's been such a blending of home and work that for organizations that are progressive, thinking about how to set standards and policies around when you can be online, when your boss can communicate with you, when you're supposed to be working, when you're not supposed to be working, those companies are going to be the forebearers of the future. Have you seen anyone doing this right?
No, absolutely not. I mean, even, it's shocking to me, even still to this day. I have those very close to me who work from home, with managers and executives with absolutely no boundaries.
Mhm.
And it almost seems like a regression, like people are trying to take advantage of a marketplace that now rewards this, and kind of the infusion of the new tech that we're all experiencing has put that hustle culture back in place.
Mm.
And so once again, it's a binary. It's either people going, I'm out, I'm going to go do this, or make hay while the sun's out is kind of the attitude that's going right now, and people are becoming exhausted again. And you're seeing in social media too. There is a well, that's a completely different topic of how people are have been conditioned in the last couple of years is to be successful in social media, you need to produce content daily, weekly. If you lose its step, the algorithm will forget about you and move on. And so you're on this, we've all been trained to be on this treadmill, especially in the content creation space.
I think that fits into the workforce wellness conversation because, producing content, engaging in content, being a part of content on a regular basis does infuse so much of the everyday aspects, of work life. And this conversation is important for coaches because we are moving into organizations.
Mhm.
We are having conversations with managers. We're having conversations with stakeholders. We're making recommendations on how to impact the health of the employee. And part of that conversation moving forward needs to be, how do we care for your employees so that they stop working
Yeah.
in a healthy way? And that conversation is going to have to be handled with tact, with care, with strategy, because you're actually going to get more out of folks if they have adequate rest, if they have adequate separation. There have been a couple spaces that I'm aware of. So Basecamp is actually an organization that moved towards fixed work hours.
Yeah.
And what they saw was a 30% increase in employee satisfaction and a 20% increase in productivity. So early adopters of this are winning in the
Mhm.
marketplace, and digital disconnection needs to start becoming a conversation in the workforce wellness space. So if you're a manager, if you're a stakeholder, if you're a coach who works in this space, this is an area 100% to be aware of. Next up is a space that I know you're very intimately familiar with: addiction. So, two big themes that are hitting coaching and the concept are addiction, are growing curiosity around what it means to be sober curious, and
Mhm.
also a conversation of the examination of the attention economy, of mindful attention, which is essentially looking at where our time goes, right?
Yeah.
So, you've talked a little bit about addiction to AI companions, um, and addiction to substances and addiction to tech. What we're seeing and what we can expect as coaches is that the term addiction no longer means drugs, shopping, food, or porn. It's everything
Yeah.
from unhealthy attachments
Well,
to.
no, I'm sorry. I didn't want to interrupt. Now it's feeding itself because the neurochemistry that's activated by being in front of a device or working on a computer has been activated, and it does not recede naturally and quickly. But what does take it down a notch is a drink or a hit of something to as you're perceiving it, to re-regulate your nervous system, to get that limbic system back, back under control. And then it just creates this loop. The classic was, with my situation, and I didn't know I suffered from anxiety until I drank because I didn't know I had anxiety until it all went away. And then I'm like, okay, here we go. This is great. So, yeah, I don't think people know and need to be made aware of that the devices and our electronic lives are doing the same, are creating the stimulus that's completely throwing off our neurochemistry, in which we feel we need to self-medicate for.
I agree, and part of this conversation that I think I'm the most excited about and hopeful about is, you mentioned the relationship. I didn't know I had anxiety until I drank. Is exactly that. Is this awareness of our internal experience? Is this awareness of where is our attention going? Am I in my head? Am I in my stomach?
Yeah.
How am I experiencing my reality? Am I scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and then all of a sudden I feel terrible about myself? Is like really noticing the connection between where we focus, what we experience, what we're consuming, and how we're feeling
Yep.
as a result of that consumption, whether it's food, again, porn, shopping, tech, it could be anything. But I love that the conversation is drawing to our focus and what do we really need and what are our core needs.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I have integrated into my coaching is really having some detailed discussions with a client about gut health and what they consume. And saying, look, this conversation that we're going to have, if you're going to go out with friends and take out 2 glasses of wine and a mud pie tonight over dinner, I want you to know what that's going to do neurochemically to you. Um, one of the things that is rampant is the talk of ADHD and ADD, and pick your nomenclature for how you want to classify that. But we danced around that with my son a little bit, and immediately it's the push towards medicating and therapy and things like that. And it was like, what we did is research the hell out of it and realized that there may be a nutritional track to go for to heal his gut.
Mm.
And we started integrating gut healthy foods and started putting magnesium threonate, that specific type of magnesium, in his smoothies, which you can buy at a Whole Foods, at a Sprouts, anywhere like that. And it made a massive change. I was just readjusting minerals. And, this isn't getting anywhere near a naturopathic kind of way. It's just, okay, let's start with the basics in healing one's gut. And especially as it um, applies to neurochemistry and just processing, knowing how your stuff works. And it's, it's made a massive change for me, and it's made a massive impact on a lot of my clients. Once they tell me what they're eating, I'm like, Jesus, really? Yeah, you want to know what that does? And, down to red food coloring. Well, I feel kind of, I feel edgy after eating a box of hot tamale cinnamon candies. And I'm like, well, let me just let you look up what red 40 does and see if these symptoms match with what you're doing here without going too far down the rabbit hole. Oh, wow, I didn't know that. All right, modify accordingly. Um, so that may have been too far off the road, but I have a profound respect and reverence for gut health. And 75 to 85% of our neurochemistry is made in our gut. They are interconnected. The gut brain connection is real. It is scientifically proven. And so you're not feeling well there, or you're not treating it well there, or if you're suppressing symptoms that currently exist, um, diet, getting outside, and conversation is a really good place to start before one of the aisles at a CVS is your first line of
Yeah.
defense.
And this is actually not off track, because the next place that I want to go is looking at teenagers and looking at what's happening to teenagers. And we cannot have that conversation without talking about the fact that one of the things that is contributing to what we call diseases of despair,
Yeah.
unprecedented levels for 11 to 18-year-olds of diseases of despair, anxiety, depression, addiction, and suicidality, one of the culprits is ultra processed food and a sedentary lifestyle.
Yes.
Facts.
Yeah.
Facts.
Yeah.
We're also having these babies, 11 to 18-year-olds, live with the mental anguish of the climate and financial crises that are upon us,
Yeah.
tech disruptions, political extremism, mass shootings, and the toxic and devastating impact of social media. So as we're starting to splice this apart, and yeah, I want to acknowledge that this is like hard to say, hard to hear, and hard to really rip apart, especially for people who have kids like you, Paul.
Mhm.
Is like this is the world that they are inheriting, and a massive part of where this analog trend in wellness is going is putting focus on this population where it has never lived before, with families doing the types of things that you're talking about, of saying, is there a connection to food here? Is there a holistic way to approach these challenges? And more and more and more families
Yeah.
are seeking the support of coaches for everything from, nutritional understanding to support with digital detox.
Yeah.
Parents who have a child who's addicted to their phone, or who don't know how to handle the struggle of, I can't exist socially as a teenager without being on social media, and parents just being at a loss because you want your child to fit in, you want your child to flourish, and you also know this is very bad for them. And we're seeing this advent of an industry around supporting the conflict resolution that takes place in family systems, the social support for these family systems, and even really working with the parents themselves around
That's
their own emotional regulation.
I was just going to say that, and I wasn't really going to. I'm probably going to lose my parent membership card on this, but this is where the leadership of coaches can come in, because the most effective teaching tool for your children is example. And I
Mm.
don't know how many times I've been called out by my kids when I bust their balls for using their devices and they throw it back on me. And
Yes.
then, so the role that a coach can play is to be that enforcer, is to be that one that says, I'm here to help your parents help you. And everybody's going to play along. And so when you don't have your devices, you're all going to do this. Or when, and so, and then that would make it easier on me if I knew that there was an external force that is like, all right, I need to get my act together and do this, that because as far as the changes that I made in my life to save my life and my health journey, which as you know is a story in itself, has been the greatest teaching device for my children. I have never had to tell them to stay away from certain things because they've seen what happened to dad because he stayed away
Yeah.
from them. So that's where there's nothing harder, I don't think, than to be a parent of teenagers in 2025 for all the reasons that you laid out. It is, they are children of the meta crisis, not poly crises, not little things, but everything intertwined together. And it is the fact that I can get a call from my daughter from high school, and she can just blithely tell me today we had a lockdown is insane to me. And I've still never have gotten used to the fact that we have gotten used to that. But if there was an external force, a leader, or somebody for a parent to rely on or lean on in establishing better structure for their family, people pay good money for that.
They do,
Yeah,
and they are, and this is where we're seeing the opportunity is that wellness initiatives have shown incredible success for adults.
yeah,
Everything from improving sleep, reducing stress, promoting healthier habits. So what we're talking about is simply greater inclusion, that for teens, yes, and for parents to really be looking at the whole family system as being in need of support. And to your point about the connectedness between what parents are experiencing and what teens are experiencing, I'm going to read a quote from the Global Wellness Summit. And they say teens' over reliance on digital communication can result in feelings of real world isolation, loneliness, emotional disconnection, anxiety, and mental exhaustion. Now, I look at that punch list and I think to myself that that experience is pretty much exemplary of every adult I know.
yeah.
And we are taking for granted that young people are not experiencing the same thing.
Or know
And
how
we're
to
allowed,
process it.
who don't know how to process it,
Yeah,
who don't have the tools, and who don't have the agency. Even if we take tech adoption alone and we look at teenagers, adolescents who spend over 3 hours a day on social media, which most do,
yeah,
and more than that, they double their risk of anxiety and depression. The average amount of time that a kiddo spends daily on social media is 4.8 hours.
yeah.
That is above the threshold for a 50% risk in anxiety and depression. So we're dealing with themes and trends here where when we're talking about the work of coaches, we're talking about wellness interventions that are designed to empower. And there are folks who are showing up as leaders in this space. Yes, it is starting in the realm of alpha consumer because that's where most interventions and trends start, is when they are well funded and they're coming from spaces where people are taking on new ways of being beyond mass produced. But we're starting to see that these initiatives are going to form the next generation of wellness practitioners. And there's a specific title for it: family wellness specialists.
Sure.
Happening
Love
now.
it.
It's being led by a lot of initiatives that are coming out of the Middle East. And typically, what we're seeing is the combination of practical activities like yoga, functional fitness, outdoor sports, combined with mindfulness practices like meditation and creative arts, along with education on emotional intelligence, and helping not just teens, but parents and younger siblings understand and manage their emotions and build resilience with interpersonal communication skills. These are the skills that people need across the board, whether we're looking at teens, families, parents, emotional management, resilience, and strengthening interpersonal communication skills. That's where the deficits live.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, listening to that, it sounds like, it sounds like a world going in the right direction. And again, um, the countless number of people that could use things like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's um,
Yeah.
it's an interesting time.
It is an interesting time. And I think what's really hopeful to me is that there are a lot of people who are picking up the shovel and let me say that again. There are a lot of people who are picking up the shovel and starting to dig now. I watch you launching Smart Funny Torture. I think about the work that I do at Lumia, working with hundreds of adults every week on how to develop emotional regulation and strengthen communication skills. And I'm saying, we are all pushing the boulder up the hill together. There are tools for us as social first responders. There are helpers who are ready to do this work, and there's an entire population of people out there that are really hungry for it. And so I think the message that I'd like to give to coaches is don't be scared
No,
to really get in there with people. Don't be scared to say the quiet part out loud. This is the time to tell your story. This is the time to share your skills.
this goes way beyond those discussions during the Lumia education, and what everybody thinks about coming out of coaching is pick your niche. It's
Mm.
like this transcends a niche. This is, what is dear to you? What are you passionate about? What would you coach about for free? Kind of thing. It's where's your shovel?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that
And
and that resonates with people. Uh, once I stopped being a coach and once I started specializing in shame, is when things took off, and when I told my story on a podcast, and when I started leaning into that path, and how I became very intimately connected with the concept of shame, my shame. That's you know that's when it took off.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And for folks who are just getting started, who are listening, or for folks who are, really in depth in your practice, this is our time. Like, this is the time for us to all explore really authentically what it means to be human, what it means to be a human service professional as a coach, and to look really critically at the landscape of our time and to decide for ourselves, where can I create impact? Where can I bring light? Where can I shed hope? And where can I support? Because if we are able to do so, the ripples that will be created starting at home with the healthy individual, then the healthy family, the healthy neighborhood, the healthy community, the healthy city, the healthy nation, the healthy world. We have the capacity to do great things. And we need to start talking about the urgency.
Yep. Could not agree more.
Paul, this was fun. I want to say thank you so much for playing in the
Oh
sandbox.
my God, this was a charge, because this, as a listener, all these years, this has always been one of my favorite of your episodes that you do when you talk about trends, because you were right. Yeah, everything has been spot on, and everything has been going in the direction that we are right now. And there was a lull, but as far as where the market was going, but now there's nothing but opportunity for the people that really choose to use their gifts in the service of coaching. So yeah, this has been fun.
Awesome. Well, we'll do it again soon.
Yeah.
And everyone, thanks for listening. If you want more of me, you know where to find me at Lumia Coaching. And if you want more of Paul, he's at Smart Funny Tortured. And we'll see y'all next time.
All right.